Surrey 11. And I'm thinking, wow, we have definitely got quite a tough game on our hands heading into game one of this year's championship. And actually, talking of Surrey's opposition, Tomo, what a beautiful setup that is. That's like a half tracker to me against Spin. And I'm absolutely going to dispatch it right now here on the podcast because we can talk about Warwickshire. And I say we, for the first time listeners, I might actually take a bit of a back seat here because Tomo, of course, you used to work for the club and you'll know a lot more about this than I do. But heading into 2022, the Bears have made some very, very interesting acquisitions. With first and foremost, the big one, Alex Davis. What a fantastic signing that is. I cannot complain about that at all, to be honest. Really, really, really happy about that. My Lancashire co-host, not so much. Alex Davis was one of his favourite players. So I don't think Joe was too happy about that. But obviously, as the resident Bears fan, absolutely elated. And in terms of outgoings from the club, we have lost Alex Tomson to Derbyshire and Ed Pollock to Worcestershire. Tomo, I never thought I'd be saying this at the start of 2021, but here we are, fast forwarding a year later. The defending champions, Warwickshire County Cricket Club. It's a lovely name tag. It's one which, again, I will be making a point of repeating here on the podcast until at least the end of this summer. But how do you assess Warwickshire's chances heading into this year's championship after an incredible year in 2021, a year which not many people would have expected to pan out the way in which it did? How do you think the Bears will cope with that name tag of reigning county champions?
I think, signing Al from Lancashire was probably, do I say it? Do I say signing of the winter?
It's up there, isn't it? It's up there. It's up there. It is.
It's really, really good. Because I think one of Warwickshire's main concerns, even throughout last season, was with top order runs again. They're so hard to come by, and they're hard to come by consistently. Obviously, last season we had Rob Yates, who did a superb job for us opening the batting alongside Dom Sibley. But however good a player is, that they're not going to score runs every time they walk out to bat. Unfortunately, that's just the way the game of cricket works. But if you add into that top three, Alex Davis, alongside, there's so many top three potential options now for Warwickshire. It's really, really good. We've seen Will Rhodes bat in the top three. We've seen him bat at 1, 2, and 3 when he's played for Warwickshire. Chris Benjamin obviously came in at the back end of last year and made his debut and got 100 batting at 3. So there's plenty of options for people to bat in the top 3 in red ball cricket. I just think we need to get Chris Benjamin thinking it's his debut every game, and then he'll be all right. So yeah, there's plenty of options for Warwickshire in that top order. Obviously, we saw Will Rhodes batting at 5 towards the back end of last season. I thought Will perform that role very well, especially in that Somerset game, batting at 5, giving us some quick runs with Matt Lamb at the end. And obviously, Matt Lamb has gone from playing quite a lot of cricket last year, who might be the person to be left out this season, unfortunately. But I actually think that Warwickshire batting unit has gone from a slight area of concern to a quite a strength of Warwickshire's now, and couple that with that bowling attack of when Ollie Stone's fit alongside Ollie Hannon-Dolby, Henry Brooks is back fit again, as well as Liam Norwell. Add in Danny Briggs and potentially Jacob Bethel, who made his debut last season. There's plenty of options for Warwickshire to play around with.
There are indeed, Tomo. And my goodness, how happy does that make me feel as a Bears fan? Because we had a tough championship in 2019. It was an absolute struggle. So many injuries. We had an entirely new bowling attack, basically, game by game in that season. And to enter 2022 as county champions, yeah, it's a good feeling. But again, as I've spoken to a lot of these players, that feeling has almost gone out the window now. It's very much all focus on retaining that trophy heading into this year's campaign. And the Bears definitely have got the bowling and the batting capabilities to do exactly that. You mentioned the strength of that top order. incredible. But for me, I think it is our seam attack. Liam Norwell, Craig Miles, Chris Wokes, the wizard. If we get him back for a couple of games, absolutely fantastic. Can't wait to see him back at the Fortress. Ollie Stone, with that extra degree of pace. You got Danny Briggs providing so much control with his left arm finger spin. And even the backup options. You know, the likes of George Garrett, really good swing bowler. Manraj Chahal, great young seamer, as we saw in the Bob Willis Trophy final.
Yeah, there's some other names that I forgot to. I didn't even mention Milo. You know, I straight away I just went to Brooks, Hannon Dolby, and Norwell. So there's going to be some decisions had to be made somewhere. Does Henry Brooks come straight back in? Obviously, he's got a decent first class record. Struggled with injury last season, but you know, Craig went really, really well last season and showcased his skills on Sky in the Bob Willis game. So yeah, I don't envy Robbo, Frosty, and Matt Mason.
Neither do I. That's going to be a tremendously, tremendously difficult task. But to be honest, any combination, I think you're absolutely sorted. To be honest, from a Warwickshire perspective, in terms of weaknesses, I've got to be honest, Tomo, I've done some digging. I've been looking at the stats from last summer, and I did find a potential area of weakness.
Go on, what have you found?
Batting collapses when it came to Warwickshire. We saw it firsthand against Durham, for example. We got bowled out for, was it 96? I believe in the first innings at the Riverside, and then Hampshire last summer as well, in that crazy day one where 20 wickets fell across the two sides. In 7 of Warwickshire's 23 completed innings in 2021, the side were dismissed for less than 200 runs. And over the course of the entire season, the Bears didn't accumulate a single 400-plus run total. Could that be a potential issue heading into this summer?
You've been reading my end of season report, Aaron.
I've been looking at Crick Info. Been doing a lot of digging.
It's the same thing, really. No, you are right. And you know, one of the things we potentially struggled with a little bit last year was if we lost a wicket, we tend to lose one in clusters. And something else, I don't know, you may have noticed it, you might not. We were brilliant for losing a wicket just before or after lunch. We were superb for it. So if anything, that's probably the thing to look at for Warwickshire, which is probably why they've made that Alex Davis signing. That'll help shore up the order and, you know, add a little bit more experience to that lineup. It's still a fairly youthful lineup with not too many first class caps. You know, Rob Yates is probably one of the senior members of that side now, and he's not played too much first class cricket compared to, if you look at Somerset's side, Tom Abel played loads of first class cricket. Craig Overton's played loads of first class cricket. So yeah, losing wickets in clusters and at breaks are probably something that Warwickshire need to be careful of. But yeah, I don't think they're in too bad of a position. We like you say, we didn't score 400 once last year, but we won the championship.
And that is all that matters. And again, that really, every single time it's mentioned, a nice bright grin appears on the face of Aaron Viles. But
I think that's something that we did really, really well. You know, I think when you as a side, you don't feel like you've got enough runs. You know, we got 300 a few times, like top end of 200s. But when you feel like you've not got enough runs, I feel like it makes you fight a little bit harder. And if you look at every single win we had, it was in the last session of the last day, other than when we won. No, that was still in the last session, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was.
Yeah. So every single win we had was in the last session of the last day. So what we did really well was we managed to stay in the game. And by staying in the game, we then went on to win it. So that first win we had, Trent Bridge away, where Brezza and Stoney had that partnership and won us the game, we took it deep and we stayed in the game, stayed in the fight, and that's where we won the game. So every win we had, we managed to stop the bleeding, stop that hemorrhage going on, and stay in the fight and go on and win the game.
Absolutely. And to the boys' credit, they did exactly that all the way up until the final game of the season. But Tomo, before we move on to our 10th and final team of these two preview shows, which will of course detail Yorkshire's chances in this year's championship, Warwickshire's player to watch. And in fact, I'm going to select this one because he's worked so hard over the off-season. And to be honest, for anybody who's watched the Bears pre-season matches, you'll see just how much work he's put in. And that is, of course, Dom Sibley. You mentioned beforehand about Rory Burns having that point to prove. Dom Sibley, I think, also has a massive point to prove.
Yeah,
as many people know, I wasn't too happy when Dom got dropped from England, especially not after being the Wisden Cricketer of the Year in 2020. And he did provide some excellent match-winning knocks against the likes of South Africa, the West Indies, Sri Lanka in the 87 on day one, against India in tough conditions in Chennai. But this off-season, he didn't go on the Australia tour with the Lions. He opted instead to stay at the edge past the nets and work on his technique. And there have been 3 games so far, Kent, Notts, and today we're playing Worcestershire. I've been watching Dom Sibley's footwork like an absolute hawk. And against both spin and seam, he looks like a completely different player. He is a man on a mission, which is great news for us as Warwickshire fans, but also for England fans as well. He does look a lot more technically correct. Tomo, would you agree with that analysis, or do you see it as someone else being the Bears player to watch out for in this year's championship?
Yeah, it's clear Sibbo's been working hard with Frosty. I don't think Frosty will have a shoulder left, to be honest. Bless him. You know, Sibbo's worked really, really hard with Jack over the winter, and I really, really hope he gets the rewards over the summer. I'm gonna pluck a different name out, and I don't know whether I'm jumping the gun, but I reckon Dan Mousley could actually be a really dark horse for this championship this year. You know, obviously he missed out last season through injury and through not being selected. But I think if Dan gets his opportunity, then he's really, really not far away from the success we saw from Rob Yates last year. You know, Dan and Rob are very, very similar players, albeit that Dan bats middle order and Rob's top order. But they're both left-handers and they both bowl right arm off spin. So if Dan does get the opportunity, don't be surprised if he does really well and goes on and scores big runs. But I think it's either Dom, Rob, or Dan for the player to watch out for. Obviously, we all know the talent of Liam Norwell, and I've got no doubt he'll repeat his successes of 2021.